All right. Good evening, everyone. It's evening here in the New Haven area, at least, but good morning or afternoon, depending on where you may be in the world. We're just going to give this a few minutes as folks come into the Zoom room here to make sure we get our audience members into the room, and then we'll start with introductions quickly after that. Wonderful. Well, it looks like our numbers are starting to level off here. Very glad to see that so many folks are able to join us on this Sunday evening. My name is Becky Tynan. I'm one of the Associate Directors of Admission here in Yale's Undergraduate Admission Office. And I'm also a member of our Eli Whitney admissions team and also partner with my colleague Patricia Way, who directs our veterans recruitment in the office. So very excited to be here with you all this evening, and very glad that I also have colleagues along for the ride who are going to be incredible resources for you. So I think what I'll do is to start off with introductions for Carolina and Patrick. So Carolina, why don't you start?
Hi, thank you, Becky, for the introduction. Yes, my name is Carolina. I am a current Eli Whitney student at Yale studying molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. I am a student assistant at the Veteran Military Affairs Office, and among other things on campus, I'm a Polish student. I'm in the Polish Society. I'm in the, among other things. Yeah, I'm excited to talk, and yeah, I'll pass it along to you, Patrick.
Hey everyone, Becky, thanks for having us here and for the warm welcome. My name is Patrick McGrath. I'm a veteran of the United States Coast Guard. I grew up in the Bay Area. I served active duty for 7 years, did some community college, and then was lucky enough to find a spot in the Eli Whitney student program. I matriculated in the fall of 2023. I'm going into my third and final year as a senior. I'm studying economics, and my interests on campus are the powerlifting club, chess club. I'm the president of the Undergraduate Veterans Society, YUVS. Also interested in finance, that sort of world. Yeah, looking forward to taking your guys' questions.
Great. Wonderful. And just a few housekeeping things too, now that we've done brief introductions. You'll have about an hour together here this evening. We certainly have some information we want to be sure to provide, but we're also very keen to answer questions that you all have. And I know that you sent some along, some of you, when you registered for this session, but also please feel free to use the Q&A function within the webinar during the session as well. And when one of us is not, presenting, we'll be happy to answer questions behind the scenes, and then we'll also be sure to answer some of those questions live as well. And also, I certainly want to make sure to take a moment now to thank those of you who joined us for joining us this evening, and also make sure to thank you for your service, which we appreciate immensely. And I think that we want to make sure, this journey going, to become an undergraduate from the background of a veteran is a unique and really exciting opportunity. And I think Patrick and Carolina, as they alluded, have had their own paths, here. And we, as a university, certainly, really prioritize bringing in students who are able to share the widest variety of perspectives and experiences possible, and certainly have an institutional commitment to making sure that we bring an increasing number of student veterans to campus. So that certainly is driving this session, this evening, and we want to hear the specific questions that you may have. I'd love kind of at this time to ask Patrick and Carolina if you might be willing to share a bit about your journey to deciding to head back to school to complete an undergraduate degree, and specifically how you wound up at Yale.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a shot at that. Really, it starts with my decision to leave the Coast Guard and join and start earning my degree. And that decision was mostly driven by something that a lot of you may be experiencing now. But as you rank up in the military, I felt that I was getting pulled farther and farther away from the mission, and it turns into more of a people management role, making sure walls and all that stuff is set. And that wasn't something that was interesting to me. And so I decided to take the exit. And I moved back to the Bay Area and I started City College of San Francisco. I did that for 2 years. And I knew that to get into some of the best schools, including the Eli Whitney Student Program, you had to have some academic rigor. And I felt that I really needed to catch up in that regard because I wasn't the greatest high school student. So I took a full 2 years to really bring myself up to speed academically, and make my application as strong as it could. From there, I took a gap year, and worked in finance. Did a search fund, if anyone knows what that might be. And during that gap year, I really worked on writing my application, just taking my time and being really thoughtful with all the prompts and essays. And my decision to go to the Eli Whitney Student Program is actually kind of a fun story. I had my admissions decisions from a few colleges on the East Coast, all very competitive with Yale, and so it wasn't an immediate, decision for me. I had to go kind of see for myself, and so I had 2-3 days to decide. I hopped on a plane to New York, and then rented a car. My first visit was the Yale campus. And my service school advisor was a Eli Whitney student. And so he met me on campus, he gave me a long tour. And then at the end, he sent a message out to the group chat. He was like, hey, I have an interested prospective Eli Whitney student here. We're going to grab dinner at this bar. If anyone would like to meet him, please come out. And to my surprise, like a dozen people showed up. And I got to spend the dinner, getting to know these folks, and they were, really genuinely interested in my story and my interests. And we had a great night, and I just kind of felt that community from day one, before I was even a student, just my first experience on campus. And I continued my tours at the other colleges, and I just didn't have quite as a compelling experience. And so, it made my decision pretty easy after checking things out. The community is really strong, and I think I made really the right choice.
Great. Carolina, would you be willing to share as well?
Definitely. So I for some more background, I am from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm also from a big family. I'm a one of 11. And so I quickly joined the Air Force kind of immediately after high school. I joined the Air Force as a weather forecaster. And I kind of have the mentality of just work as hard as you can. Um, and so I kind of went in and I kind of wanted to make the most of my Air Force experience. So yeah, I kind of pushed myself where I could, and um I think made myself stand out, and so I was able to get awards and rank up sooner. So I think there were small ways that I kind of made myself stand out, but then there were also ways that I still was still very I always, when with every intention that I had in the Air Force, it's I always kind of went with my gut and went with my heart. So I volunteered and taught yoga for a period of time, and basically I had always dreamt of going to college, and so I kind of, once I was on a steady path in the Air Force and I had more just more solid ground, I started to take classes on the side during deployment and my off time. But taking online classes is kind of hard if you want to do labs and you want to really like have an up close and personal experience of school. I was doing shift work, so it made that hands-on experience really difficult, that experience that I was looking for. And basically, I kind of because I am from a big family, my brother was also a veteran and also in the Eli Whitney Students Program, so he helped usher and guide me. And honestly, like Yale feels like home because of all the connections that I've made here and kind of how serendipitous the Eli Whitney Students Program kind of works. I feel very at home at Yale, so yeah. Thank you,
Wonderful.
Becky.
Yeah, well, thank you both for being so open and sharing because I think it's probably been 7 or 8 years now that I've been working with the Eli Whitney team on the admission side of the process, and we are just constantly um, so excited and so really overwhelmed with the variety of experiences that prospective students have had and what they have navigated. And so it's exciting, certainly work for us. And to ground us in a bit more of what we'll be talking about as we go forward in the session, I just wanted to share quickly our mission statement. And this is the Yale College admission statement, mission statement. So for the undergraduate college, the university has its own mission statement as well. But I really like sharing this Yale College mission statement because I think it really does, it starts off obviously with the fact that we're seeking exceptionally strong students. We're an academic institution, first and foremost. But when we bring students here, we're thinking about philosophically educating them in the academic sense, but also in a highly personal and kind of future focused sense of we're interested in who students are going to be on campus as peers in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And um, again, perspectives that they'll bring, how they'll contribute socially on campus. And basically, ultimately, we're looking to graduate students who are going to have an impact in whichever sphere or spheres, they wind up in. So, selfishly for us in the admissions office, we all feel like we have the best job in the world because we have incredible students who we get to know and have this really, fortunate opportunity to craft incoming classes. Um, just to get a sense of our numbers in terms of student veterans on campus. And we currently have going into this year 56 undergrads who are veterans, another 150 students who are in our graduate and professional schools who have served. And I'd say those groups certainly get together depending on kind of an individual's own experiences. There certainly are opportunities for our student veterans across the college and the graduate and professional schools, and certainly staff and faculty as well, to spend time together and share space together. Nuts and bolts wise, I just always want to make sure that we share that we grant application fee waivers for veterans and service members. So that is a piece we always want to make sure is clear. We are a yellow ribbon school. And in a second, I will detail a bit about the 3 different application pathways we have, as that is really one of the areas where we tend to see the greatest variety of questions. And as Carolina actually already mentioned, because she's working in our Veteran and Military Affairs office, we have a wonderful Veterans and Military Affairs office that's headed up by our colleague Holly Hermes. And they really work on making sure we are having opportunities to communicate with, bring together the really broadest group of the veterans community that we can on campus, which is wonderful. Um, with my admissions officer hat on, I will just keep the mic for a minute to talk a bit about the three different application pathways we have, which is a relatively unique piece here at Yale. We certainly expect that you all are likely looking at a variety of colleges and universities, as you should be. That's an appropriate way to go about this process. But for us here at Yale, we basically see our student veterans apply through each of these different pathways. So we have students who will apply as first year students to start off clean slate as first year students. As you can see here, typically students who've completed less than the equivalent of a semester of transferable academic credit. Then we have a transfer pathway, which is really for students who will have a minimum of 2 semesters of, or have had a minimum of 2 semesters of college enrollment and earned at least a term of transferable credit. Both our first year students and our transfer students are eligible for on-campus housing. For our first year students, they're required to live on campus their first 2 years, unless they're over the age of 25, in which case then that's an optional piece of things. And transfer similarly, living on campus is an option. Some transfer students may come in and choose to live off campus. And then we have our Eli Whitney program, which is what both Patrick and Carlina have already referenced quite a bit. And this is our program that really focuses on enrolling individuals who've had at least 5 years of separation from their high school experience until now. And have not received a bachelor's degree. So we do not grant second bachelor's degrees. And so there is that requirement there as well. And for our Eli Whitney students, our Eli Whitney students are not eligible for on-campus housing. They live off campus. But as you can see here, I think one of the great things about the Eli Whitney program from my perspective, and then of course I'm going to pass the mic over to Patrick and Carolina to talk a bit more about their experiences. But to me, the fact that our Eli Whitney students are affiliated with one of the residential colleges on campus, which are their 14 residential colleges, which are their own real, tight-knit communities on campus. And first year students and transfer students may physically live in the residential college, but each one has dining halls and study spaces and meeting spaces and hangout spots and snack bars, all of those kinds of things. And each of our Eli Whitney students, as I said, will live off campus, but they'll be assigned to one of the residential colleges and be a part of that community, invited to all events, be connected to advisors who are connected to the residential college, all of those pieces. And I think a special part of the Eli Whitney program too is to be part of this cohort of students coming in. And within our Eli Whitney students program, we certainly have the majority of our student veterans on campus who are undergrads are in the Eli Whitney program. But we also have students who have had a separation from their academic experience for all sorts of different reasons, professional and personal, and have a wide swath of experiences. So that becomes a really great cohort for students. And here, as my colleague, Patricia Way will often say, she really likes to think of the Eli Whitney program as a traditional program for non-traditional students, which I think makes a lot of sense when you think about the fact, we've covered the non-traditional student piece in that our Eli Whitney students have not gone straight from a traditional high school background into their undergraduate years, but it is a traditional program in that our Eli Whitney students are enrolled in Yale College as undergrads in the same exact way as any of our undergraduate students. They're going to receive the same degree when they graduate as all of our undergrads. And so that's kind of the traditional, piece of things. Yeah, I don't know, Carlina or Patrick or, each of you are welcome to answer this as well. Was there anything in particular about the Eli Whitney program itself, you don't necessarily need to, compare it to other programs that you may have been looking at, but anything in particular that really kind of, stood out and was appealing to you?
Yeah, I can go for sure. So one thing I didn't really put much emphasis on this when I was applying, but having been a student here, it's something that I've taken advantage of a lot, and I find to be an incredible tool for like the non-traditional student, and that's the flexibility of your course demand. So on the side it says we have the option to pursue our studies full-time or part-time, and essentially what that means is we can, as long as we take 3 credits in an academic year, so one in the fall, one in the spring, and one over the summer, you're still entitled to, your full scholarship for the year, which gives you a pretty generous stipend for housing, and you're still, in good academic standing. Whereas, for traditional students, I believe they have to get permission to go underneath 4 credits at a time. And when I say 4 credits at Yale, we do one course is 1 credit. So, I know a lot of colleges do like one course is 3 to 4 credits. So 4 credits is like full course load. And I've been able to just drop classes and go down to 2 credits. Nobody's asking any questions. They're just like, okay, that's what you want to do. Great. And it's been fantastic for me, recruiting for, jobs like that can take a lot of time out of your day. And so if that's something you want to focus on, you can, have a light semester, focus on that. If you're doing some research or you're prepping for like grad school apps, or you want to take the GMAT or the MCAT or something, you can have a light load for that semester to focus on whatever it is you want to do. And I know that at all the other colleges I looked at, that wasn't really an option. You're thrown in with the rest of the bunch, and I think there's some positives to that too. Just kind of being thrown in the mix and being held to the exact same standards as everyone else. But I think having the flexibility to give yourself some breathing room, especially in your first year, if you're just trying to figure it out, it's a perk that I've used a lot, and it's made this experience just way less stressful than it could have been. So that's what I'll say on that.
Yeah. And thank you so much for mentioning that too, Patrick, because I do think that's one of the major differentiators when applicants, they may have already decided that they would like to apply to Yale, and they're trying to decide whether it makes sense to apply as a transfer student or as an Eli Whitney student. And students who come in as first-year students or as transfer students do need to maintain that full-time enrollment. But the Eli Whitney program does allow term by term, which is semester by semester, for students to make that decision about part-time versus full-time, and for all sorts of different reasons. I mean, our Eli Whitney students are probably the ones who are more likely to potentially have family, with them, or to have adult responsibilities that they're balancing with their studies. And so that flexibility can be really, really helpful for sure. Okay, great. I'm going to keep us moving along here. And we actually are going to transition to, chatting about affordability. And we have, I don't know if Patrick knew this was coming or not, but this great, great quote from Patrick that, we like to share, because I think, one of the pieces, that is often out there in the world is how expensive private colleges and universities, schools like Yale, do tend to be, and that is the case. And we're certainly not trying to hide from the fact that that the cost of attendance is high. But what we do want to make sure we make very clear is how generous our financial aid offers are, and the various ways that students are able to leverage those resources to make sure that Yale is affordable. It really is one of the highest priorities of ours as an institution to make sure that if a student is admitted to Yale, that their full need is met financially, to make sure that that financial piece is not going to be a barrier in ultimately attending. And for our students who are veterans, then, this is also a really can be a complex question too of thinking about military benefits that, students may, have access to, and then also thinking about our need-based aid. We always really encourage applicants to apply for our need-based aid, even if they are strongly considering using, VA benefits that, to which they have access, or yellow ribbon benefits, all of those pieces, because our need-based financial aid can be so generous for students that, as you see in, Patrick's quote here, and he's not the only one. We have many students who are choosing to hold on to their veterans benefits to use later on for graduate school, and are using Yale's need-based aid as undergrads. So we always encourage applicants to, apply for need-based aid so that they can see what is available, and it is typically quite generous. Um, and I'll switch to the next slide too, just so that we can get all this information out here. And the other thing that I would just mention too is, one of our hopes when we do webinars like this is that you can all meet some human beings who are on kind of this side of things. And we have wonderful colleagues in the financial aid office, and in the Veterans and Military Affairs offices who are there to help and support our students to make sure that they have places to go with their questions and get responses to their questions about how all of these different pieces can fit together. From the admissions side, we always want to make clear, that we run a need blind admissions process. So when my colleagues and I are evaluating applications and making admissions decisions, we have no specific knowledge of the amount of aid a student may or may not need in order to attend Yale. We're focused on the merits of, the student's application. And we have policies from the financial aid side of things to make sure that we're meeting 100% of admitted students' need with a financial aid offer when they are, admitted. You can see a few more details, here in terms of the vast majority of our students are graduating, without student loan debt. All of these pieces are really important pieces to consider as you're thinking about this search as well. For our Eli Whitney students, if they have, dependent children as well, there's a child care stipend that is part of the financial aid offer. So we really do our best, and the financial aid office does its best to think about all the different pieces that are factors in the financial reality of our students, and to do our best to make sure we're meeting their needs fully. Yeah. Carlina or Patrick, do you have thoughts on the financial side of things and affordability side at all?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think for me, Yale has overall been affordable for given that it is a private institution. There are options. You can either, if you are a veteran and you do have your GI Bill benefits, there are many options within that. And what I really like about being at Yale is that there's so many resources if you want help or you have questions, because no two situations are the same when it comes to financial aid and what your needs are. But I love that Yale is always meeting everyone like where they're at. I think it was 1 year ago now that basically the Eli Whitney Student Society like vouched for more funding and just people to have emergency funds, people with families. There was a lot of support there. So it's just nice to know that like no two situations are the same, and Yale is willing to like meet you where you're at. And we understand that like this is ever changing, and we kind of welcome everyone no matter what your financial situation is.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Well, great. Well, let's switch gears a little bit to talk about the student experience on campus. When it comes to the academic scene on campus, there is a ton of information that you can access on the website about kind of individual academic departments and pieces. But I mean, one of the things that I always want to make sure to share is that we are a liberal arts institution at heart. So what that means is that we want all of our students to have both breadth and depth of academic experience. So at Yale, one way we do that is that we have a group of distributional requirements that really provide the scaffolding of the academic program. So each of our students will take 2 classes in the arts and humanities, 2 in the social sciences, 2 in the natural sciences, 2 courses that focus on quantitative skills, 2 that focus on writing skills, and then there's a foreign language requirement as well. That can be 1, 2, or 3 semesters, depending on proficiency coming in. There are a variety of placement tests, available for students when they come in too, to make sure that we've got everyone kind of positioned appropriately in terms of their coursework. When I list off those requirements, I always worry that it sounds like it compartmentalizes everything, but in reality, there are hundreds of courses that fulfill each of those requirements. So there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of choice, depending on whether a student's coming in with transferable credit or not. They will be kind of in different places with their academic experience. But the goal ultimately is to nudge students a bit to take some classes that might be out of their usual wheelhouse to make sure they are getting that broad liberal arts education. And then when we think about the admissions process, and we'll get to this kind of toward the end too, but just to kind of connect the dots a bit, when we're looking at admissions applications, we are looking for students who we think are going to thrive in that kind of environment where there are over 80 different majors and they're going to be faced with the choice of choosing their major. They'll have the opportunity to connect with peers who have wildly different academic and intellectual interests, and we're looking for students who really are eager and curious to be in that kind of intellectual environment on campus. We definitely tend to have very small seminar style classes in the majority of the courses that students take. So the student to faculty ratio is 6 to 1 across the college. So lots of opportunities for those smaller, really seminar discussion based kind of opportunities, for our students as well. We're certainly looking for students who are going to thrive in a rigorous, fast-paced academic environment as well. But maybe the final thing I'll mention before turning it to Patrick and Carolina a bit to hear about their experiences is that this is a place where the academic program is rigorous, it moves quickly, but there are also incredible supports for students, or maybe I should say instead of but, to say and there are all sorts of incredible supports for students. So even though this is a place that's built to push students to really stretch themselves academically, there's support all along the way to really allow students to have the best possible experience that they can have. So I'm curious, Carolina, would you be willing to talk a bit about maybe your experience with faculty and what those interactions have been like? If there was anything that surprised you about those interactions, or just how you'd characterize it?
Yeah, so my experience with Yale's sort of greater faculty has been amazing. Basically, as soon as I entered Yale, I was met with a faculty advisor, and I basically was able to discuss all my like goals and interests with this faculty advisor, and they could give me real advice from the director of undergraduate. Like, he was the director of the major. He's able to give. I was an architecture major when I first came in, um, but I switched my major, which is another great thing about Yale is that you can switch your major and you're so welcome to explore all of your interests. Um, and so, yeah, so you can get basically from the uppermost level of the major, you can get that advice from your faculty advisor. Um, but yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on the faculty.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And Patrick, I might lob a question your way that kind of connects to where we're headed. in terms of kind of this next slide that I'll put up, talking about kind of outcomes and connecting students to their next step after Yale, and not only their next step after Yale, but also summer opportunities and things like that. Would you be willing to share a bit about kind of how you see your academic path and coursework connecting to things you've done in the summer or opportunities that you're hoping to connect with once you finish up?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Where should I start? Well, so when I when I was coming to Yale and I was thinking about what I wanted to study, I knew it was going to be economics. But what about economics am I interested in? It was really um, like energy economics. The energy transition is something that I've been really, really interested in for a long time, and decided to really like commit to just learning a lot about it. Um, and I'll be able to touch on my summer experience and then some of the job opportunities that come after. So let's see, where do I start? I knew I wanted to study economics. I knew I wanted to study energy. And last summer, I had the opportunity to do a study abroad program. And this study abroad program is 100% covered by Yale. It's not competitive. If you are a student on financial aid, you're guaranteed those funds. And I chose to go to Cambridge University in the UK, and I chose their program because I got to take two economics classes that were just kind of like prerequisite, pretty normal. And then I got to do, for my third credit, an independent research project. And I decided to make that project all about the energy transition and nuclear energy. And I was paired with a PhD energy guy to kind of guide me. And so that was one of the resources that I was able to tap into Yale that is setting me up for my future career. And so that I was able to leverage that experience at Cambridge, where I could really it was just an excuse for me to write a 20-page paper about something that I was really interested in. That's all it was. It was like, how can I have like a primer on this to prepare me for what I wanted to do this summer? And I just got finished with a 10-week internship at an investment bank in New York City. And I was connected to that investment bank, one through the Veteran Network, which is really strong on Wall Street, really strong at Yale and all the professional schools. But it was also through the clubs at Yale. I was a member of Yale's Undergraduate Diversified Investments Club. We would meet, I think, twice a week. And we would go through and just study like investment banking technicals, and we'd go through each other's resumes. And part of being part of that club was you would get invitations to these networking sessions where like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, all the big investment banks are coming to New Haven to meet students that they might want to hire. And you had front row access to all of those people through this club. And so I was able to make connections there and get interviews at tons of places, and was able to land a spot at my favorite destination. And I know that amongst my undergraduate friends and my Eli Whitney student friends, the clubs and the connections that you'll make here are just going to set you up for these incredible job opportunities that it's really a privilege to have access to, because a lot of folks just don't get these sort of opportunities. Just looking at the slide now. Yeah, 90K plus median salary, very true. All the graduate schools are going to see this Yale on the resume, and the Eli Whitney Student Program, I think, has a fantastic reputation amongst the Yale community and broader. So I think it's kind of seen like a Yale like plus almost. It's like you're very interesting to them because there's so few, and I think it really positions you great to gain admission to one of these competitive graduate schools, or snag a job at a consultancy or a firm or anything like that. So yeah, I found that the platform here has just given me so much opportunity. Yeah, it's been really exciting.
Wonderful. It is so exciting. And I know we only have so much room, on this slide, and so have listed some of the most kind of, frequent employers and frequently attended graduate school programs, but that is certainly a set that has much greater breadth than we're able to reflect on this one slide as well. And for any you attending tonight who are interested in taking a bit of a deeper dive into this kind of outcomes information, our Office of Career Strategy has a fantastic website where they actually have tools where you can look at, what, by major, you can see what are students in, X major doing when they graduate, or, what kinds of fields are they going into? Where are they working? What kinds of graduate programs are they heading into? So there's a ton of information there. And also, I just want to mention that in addition to the extracurricular clubs that Patrick was mentioning, which are great connectors to opportunities, there also are advisors in the Office of Career Strategy who are there to meet with students to talk about not only potential jobs and graduate school after graduation, but also to talk about those summer opportunities and funding those summer opportunities, whether that be through funds in a student's financial aid offer or separate funds through dozens and dozens of different fellowships and things that are available through the Office of Career Strategy. So another spot where there is just a whole lot of support going on. Um, and now we're going to switch gears kind of again a little bit just to think about other aspects of the student experience and to kind of launch into talking about the admissions process itself in these last 20 minutes or so that we have together. So sorry, I'm messing up with our slides here. Before I kind of go on to the next slide though, I did just want to kind of encourage each of you to think about what are ways that you at this moment, based on what you know about Yale, would describe the Yale, experience. Just even think in your head of what a few adjectives might be. And kind of come up with those in your head. And then I want to share our next slide, which is, my colleague Patricia basically polled, a group of our students to get an idea of, how it is that they would describe the Yale experience. And you see a lot of kind of a wide variety of examples here in terms of how students are feeling, from transformative to humbling and illuminating and fun and galvanizing. I'm curious, maybe actually both Patrick and Carolina, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Either are there words here that you would jump on as being ones that you had thought of, or are there others that you would share in terms of characterizing your experience? Carolina, can I start with you?
Yes, I would like to say grateful. I think it's really amazing hearing the perspectives of the professors, a lot of the professors on campus, and not only just being a student of theirs, especially some of these professors who have in the biology field like made significant contributions to biology, and medicine and health in general. Um, but also have sitting next to them and be able to pick their brains and ask them for any piece of advice or help with the problem set. It's just kind of amazing how you kind of have like a personal experience with your professor, and there's just so much that you can gain from like getting to know them better and kind of learning about their paths because it can be truly enlightening. So grateful for that.
Thanks. Patrick, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I know for a fact that humbling was one that I put down in the bottom right. I say that because the the people that you meet here and the people that I've been able to interact, including other Eli Whitney students like Carlina, they just blow me away. Like everyone's accomplishments are incredible. They're so intelligent. They're so driven and so focused. That it's like, wow, like, I've never been around such impressive people, as impressive people in my life. And it's humbling and it's great. And I think, it kind of leaps into a bunch of other words, which is like, motivating. You're around these people all the time. You're like, man, I just, they make you want to just be better and work harder, be more thoughtful. And it's just been an incredible environment. I've grown so much here. And it's always just because the people
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those. It's fun kind of for us to obviously, have a chance to hear from students about once they're here, how it is that they reflect on their experiences. And I want to take a few minutes to talk about New Haven as well, since we're not able to all be together. Ooh, these keep going faster than I mean them to. We're not all together in New Haven, unfortunately. But I think New Haven is a big part of the experience of being a Yale student, for sure. So our home city is a great one. It is a small city, population's about 130,000 or so, and we're right, really, almost exactly halfway between Boston and New York City. So there's definitely an urban vibe to New Haven, but it's a quite manageable, size for a city. And I'd say for most of our students, they really do wind up thinking of themselves both as citizens of New Haven and as Yaleys and members of the Yale College community. And I think, particularly if students come to Yale as an Eli Whitney student, perhaps even more so, they feel, really kind of enmeshed in the New Haven community because they're living off campus and having that experience as well. But let's see, Patrick, could I ask you, is there anything you'd like to share about New Haven for folks on the Zoom here who may never have had the chance to visit New Haven, or share a bit about your experience and thoughts on living here?
Sure. Well, you have to lead with the pizza. Pizza's world class. But what I really liked about it is that there's a lot more to New Haven than just Yale. The city does sort of revolve around it, and it's right in the center. And it's, a lot of people that work around here are affiliated with Yale, but there's so much else going on, and it's kind of a metropolitan area, so it's not like a sleepy college town. There's always people out and about. There's always things going on. So, if you feel like you need to disconnect from the Yale community, which we all do sometimes, there's a million things to go do and to go see, and all these beautiful towns and beaches nearby. I think it strikes like a really healthy balance between college town and Commerce City.
Great. And Carlina, could I lean on you to talk a little bit about living off campus, and maybe importantly, how one finds, their first place if they're living off campus in New Haven, and maybe if you're willing to share a little bit about your living situation and where you're living?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about it. So, as Becky mentioned, I am an Eli Whitney student, so I live off campus. I have stayed in the same apartment since I moved to New Haven. I was fortunate enough to find one, oddly enough, on Facebook Marketplace. So it kind of took a little bit of looking around and some advice on what are the more popular neighborhoods to live in if you're a student, because not all neighborhoods are easily accessed. There's not as good of access into Yale's campus. So I opted to live in East Rock, but there are other options, Worcester Square. Some people even live in Westville. But I like what Patrick put nicely is that New Haven is kind of a metropolitan area, so you can't really go all that wrong. But yeah, it's not that hard. And You can find affordable housing in New Haven, even though it is on the East Coast, and you might expect, and I personally experienced an increase in my cost of living. Grew up in the Midwest, and I served mostly in the South, so coming to the East Coast was kind of a shock, but I've loved adjusting to this lifestyle. Um, but yeah, it's not that hard to find housing in New Haven.
Great, great. Thank you both so much. And to keep moving here to thinking about kind of the admission side of things and building a strong application, we've really gotten at some of these thoughts through other aspects of the presentation. But I will kind of wind up here talking a bit about the application process and some pieces of advice. Based on my years of experience evaluating applications. As I mentioned when we were discussing Yale College's mission, academic strength is obviously going to be an important component of any application for admission. And so we certainly are, building that into our evaluation and academic strength broadly. It may be that a student may not have had their strongest performance as a high school student. Yet they have now taken some more recent college coursework at a community college or elsewhere, and have some really strong recent academic credentials to share with the admissions committee. That's considered very positively in our process. We're also interested in what kind of impact applicants are making on their communities. And that can be in many different ways. But we're interested in whether that's through employment, through service, through one's family, through clubs of which they're a part. Are interested in considering all of that as out of interest for how applicants are making an impact on their communities. And that also allows us to start thinking about how that person will make an impact on our campus, which is ultimately what we're looking to figure out. And this reflection and insight piece, as Patrick was describing, kind of in many ways what has made his Yale experience pretty special. I mean, being surrounded by insightful, reflective people is part of what makes Yale such a special place. And so when we're evaluating admissions applications, we're certainly looking for writing and essays and responses that are going to give us a sense that a student does have that capacity to be reflective, thoughtful as they think about their place in the world and what it is, that motivates them, all of those kinds of things. To put a bit of a finer point on, a few things, it is really helpful for us to see strong recent academic credentials. We are certainly, and we being the admissions committee and readers, are much more interested in the most recent performance than we are in previous performance. As I mentioned when we were talking about Yale academics and the fact that we're a liberal arts institution, it can be particularly helpful for us to see that applicants have taken a broad, group of liberal arts type courses in mathematics, in English, in across the sciences, social sciences, all of those pieces can be really foundational and helpful as we consider admissions applications. For the Eli Whitney program specifically, the ACT or SAT is an optional component, so standardized testing is optional with the Eli Whitney program. We truly mean that it's optional. We do not require it. With the first year process or the transfer process, it is required to submit standardized testing. Again, we get back to this piece of the essays and being interested in hearing getting a sense of some depth of thought and reflection from students, looking for kind of those intellectual intangibles like curiosity that give us the sense that a student is really ready to thrive in our classrooms. One of the things we get a lot of questions about is the recommendation letters. And so We require 2 letters of recommendation, and preferably those are from academic sources. So, professors who have taught the student in the classroom. We know that's not always possible, and so that is not a hard and fast requirement. It may be that a supervisor or um, an officer, whoever that may be, is an appropriate person to submit a recommendation. But it can be helpful for us to see academic ones if that's a possibility. We always ask for a resume as students are applying. And as I think I said earlier too, we encourage our applicants to think about applying to a broad range of schools across a range of selectivity. Knowing how selective these processes can be, and also just kind of how different the experiences on different campuses can be. Casting a wide net is typically good advice in the process. So those are a few kind of kernels that I wanted to share about the admissions process itself, and also just wanted to mention a couple of outside resources, organizations with whom we partner. I know Patrick mentioned Service to School earlier, and many of our applicants have availed themselves of mentorship through Service to School, which has been helpful to them. It is certainly not required to be part of one of these programs in order to apply to Yale as a veteran, but these are just opportunities that are out there, and organizations, again, with which we partner, both Service to School and Warrior Scholar, that can be incredibly helpful in supporting students through along their path, applying to college. Great. And then just a couple of nuts and bolts pieces before I get back to Patrick and Carolina. I'll plant the seed here because I would love to get back to each of you to ask for advice that you would have to share now that you are able to reflect on your experience, but what kinds of advice you'd like to share with prospective students who are joining us tonight. But here on this slide, you can see a snapshot of our application deadlines for all 3 pathways: first year, transfer, and Eli Whitney. You can check out our website. I do encourage you to take a quick screenshot or write down my email address. I'm Rebecca.Tynan, even though I go by Becky, and my colleague Patricia Way directs both the Eli Whitney program and is our director of Veterans Outreach as well. Both of us are more than happy to be in touch. And so feel free to send any follow-up questions our way via email, and we're happy to be in touch about those and have conversations, as we do frequently, about these different application pathways, as well, in terms of students working through thinking about which one may be the best option for them. As we go through here. And I also wanted to mention we have a couple of other events coming up, online webinar events. We have a Eli Whitney info session, which is happening this Wednesday, the 13th. And in a minute, I can put URLs into the chat with that information as well. And then next Sunday, we have a question and answer session specifically with current students on campus, specifically for our student veterans as well. And so those are hopefully great opportunities to connect with us. Patricia will be running the session on Wednesday, and we'll also incorporate students in each of these as well, which will hopefully be helpful. I know we are coming up on time, but I do just want to take a minute to take a peek at the Q&A. And again, I know we've had a lot of questions come in, and we may not be able to get to all of them. Please do feel free to reach out to Patricia or me as you're thinking about this, and don't hesitate to put questions. If we don't get to your question that you put in the chat or on the registration form tonight, please don't hesitate to reach out via email. very good question about kind of, transfer credits and how, students get a sense of what kinds of equivalency they may have. We don't have, a tool where students can really, pop in courses that they've taken and know whether they'll transfer. The thing that we do, which I think is pretty important, is that when oh, actually, Patrick said he would like to answer that question. So I think I'm going to hand it over to you actually to talk a bit about that. And then if there's anything else that I wanted to add, I'll add it on. But I'd love for you to answer that one,
I
Patrick.
I didn't mean to do that. I was
Oh,
just going to clear from the queue. But I mean, I did have a lot of my credits taken in, so I guess I could speak to it.
yeah.
Like I said, I did 2 years of community college. I also did some classes while I was active duty, and I think Yale took 14 classes, 14 credits. And so I came in as a second semester sophomore. Um, and it's funny. I think all the like when I was a prospective student, you want to get through college really quickly, and you don't want those credits to be for nothing. But I can say with a lot of confidence that almost every Eli I know here wishes that they didn't declare any of those credits, because once you're here, you're gonna want to take those classes, because the quality of the education and experience you get here as compared to an online community college or something similar, it's apples to oranges. I wish I could take some of those credits back. But yeah, they do accept a lot. If you're eager to get through quickly and you don't want those things to go to waste, they'll definitely be receptive of it.
Mhm. And I think a good rule of thumb to think about is that if a course that an applicant has taken is similar to a course that we offer, that course is very likely to transfer. So kind of core liberal arts type courses are the most likely to transfer if students have taken um, what might be considered more pre-professional types of classes. Um, Things more like, nursing or accounting. Those are less likely to transfer just because they don't map to kind of the liberal arts coursework that we're offering here. Another piece that I always want to mention too on the transfer credit part is that when a student applies and is admitted, at the same time as we send along our offer of admission, we'll send along a transfer credit report. So at that time, students will know right at that moment how many of their credits are eligible to transfer so that they can consider that information as they decide, whether to accept the offer of admission or not. There can be conversations about, those pieces as students are making that decision. Another question that I just thought I would answer live here is a question of whether there are times where we might send something like a likely letter or an earlier offer of admission to Eli Whitney students or student veterans. And this is something that we can discuss. We're very aware of the fact that sometimes the timeline of separation, from the military, it can be a bit of a complex puzzle, or those who are currently serving thinking about that separation and needing information about their college options may need an earlier timeline. We can't make guarantees about our ability to respond on different timelines, but we are open to having those conversations with applicants who are currently serving, our veterans, if they have particular needs that are impacting their schedule. Patricia and I can have those kinds of conversations with students to see if there is anything that we're able to adjust in the process. Um, Great. And then maybe I'll take kind of one last question, and then I'm going to start to bring this to a close and ask Patrick and Carolina for their advice before we finish up. But there's a question in here um, about kind of the choice of major as part of the application process and whether um, kind of it matters what major a student may be interested in pursuing, if that makes the process more or less competitive for students. And really in our process, because our students will always have really until the end of the equivalent of their sophomore year to choose a major. So none of our applicants are absolutely committing to a major, right off the bat. We are always interested on the application to know what kinds of academic interests students have, but we're often actually even more interested in how they're thinking about those interests. Again, that's where that depth and reflection come in, how their mind works, what they're interested in, kind of that capacity for deep interest in an area. Those are the things that tend to stand out to us most, and we aren't separating applicants by, these are the applicants who are interested in economics, and these are the applicants who are interested in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. We're looking at them, as we say, holistically, in that we're looking at the big picture. And ultimately, we want to make sure that students are well prepared for the areas that they're interested in. So that is certainly something that we'll be considering. But it's not that a student is declaring their major as part of the application and that puts them in a particular pool. We're looking at these things, quite big picture as we look at this. Okay, with that, I want to be mindful of the time, and I know we've run over. Thank you for all of these great, questions. But Patrick and Carolina, could I ask you to, kind of bring this home by sharing, some final thoughts, and or advice that you might have for prospective students as you think back a few years ago when you were in their shoes? Um, what it is that you might have wished you knew then that you're able to share.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take this one. I think if you're thinking about going to school and if you're thinking about higher education, I think as a veteran, your perspective is so important, not just in the sense of college, but also in the workforce. I think like we offer such an important perspective. A lot of us have leadership experience, a lot of us have kind of been through hardship. So I think having our perspective, and no matter what field, whether you become a doctor or a physicist or an engineer, I think as a veteran, your perspective is so important. So if you have any, like, if you really are thinking about school, if it's for you, I think you should absolutely go for it. I think you don't have anything to lose. If anything, you'll be surprised how much you've done in your life is actually like really amazing and how much Yale especially would love to have you and love to have your perspective and kind of become a part of our greater community. So yeah, go for it. Patrick?
Um, what I was going to say is very similar to Carlina, and I think the underlining thing is, don't self-select out of something like this. When I was applying, I thought that these types of programs for, like the Navy SEALs, the MARSOC guide, like the super high speed guys that have all these crazy stories, they'd never take a look at a coastie. But that's just not true. That's just not the case. We bring so many diverse perspectives, and you really shouldn't discount your experience. Nobody's experience is exactly like yours, and I think they're really interested in just learning more about you and seeing that you are interested in taking on more and developing an interest in something. So yeah, don't self-select, and be proud of your stories and try to tell them in your voice.
I couldn't have said it better myself, most certainly. But certainly from where I sit, as a reader of applications and member of the committee who engages the selection process, I would absolutely agree with everything that Carolina and Patrick just wisely shared. We are incredibly interested in the talents and perspectives that our student veterans are bringing to campus. And what it is that they're excited about taking advantage of at Yale and ultimately taking on in their professional lives and personal lives after Yale. So thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. Again, I'm sorry that we didn't get to each and every one of the questions, but please do not hesitate to reach out to Patricia or me with those questions. And please do, if if you registered for this session, you'll be receiving all the information about the session coming up this Wednesday, the 13th, and then also next Sunday. And we very much hope that you will join us for those sessions, as well as they'll have slightly different angles than this session did as well. So they can be a great trio of sessions to attend all together. And so thank you again for joining us this evening, and we wish you all the best. Thank you.